With the current geopolitical news cycle being primarily focused on the war in Ukraine and events surrounding it, many have forgotten or simply don't know Russia's NATO equivalent, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, which surprisingly has played an essentially non-existing role in the conflict. But of course, this is nothing new. As other conflicts have shown, the CSTO is quite passive for military alliance, even when member states are at war. During the Cold War, the Soviet counter to NATO was the Warsaw Pact, consisting of a number of communist Eastern and Central European states the Soviet Union liberated during the tail end of World War II. But with the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia was arguably at its weakest point both economically and militarily. It had been in centuries, suffering from complete economic collapse with a starving populace. The collapse of the Soviet Union, besides destroying the economy, would also destroy the cornerstone of the Russian defensive doctrine, this being the buffer area west of the Russian heartland, which would in a war stand between their enemies and the Russian heartland around Moscow. Further, with the Russian sphere of influence, which in the last 2 centuries dominated Eurasia, now being disintegrated, with former Warsaw Pact countries joining NATO en masse, Russia set their sights on maintaining their sphere of influence and building up a new defensive policy. It would see Russia spearhead 2 new military alliances, which didn't include a mutual defense clause, the Shanghai Five and the CST, the Collective Security Treaty. The Shanghai Five would include China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia and Tajikistan, and as mentioned, wasn't a traditional military alliance, focusing more on cooperation in fields such as security, economy and trade. This later evolved into the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which includes now most of the mainland Asian powers, but still isn't a traditional military alliance. Following the breakup of the Soviet Union, many of these new post-Soviet states began initiatives to build up their own armed forces. But there was still a universal consensus that there was a need for some sort of defensive structure that could guarantee their security, especially in light of a slew of regional conflicts which previously were suppressed under Soviet rule, but now broke out across these former Soviet territories. This led Russia, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan to sign the Collective Security Treaty, with another 3 post-Soviet states, Azerbaijan, Belarus and Georgia, signing the treaty in 1993. The treaty took effect in 1994 and was recognized by the UN in 1995. While many hoped the CST would live up to what it was made up to be, it didn't, with multiple issues that would impact the alliance even up until now. It became ever so clear that the alliance was just an effort of Russia trying to retain control over their former territories, with it supposedly even forcing members to join the alliance. Russia proved that it could not maintain and back up this dominant position in the alliance, seen by its failure to provide benefits to treaty states like the US can due to NATO, as the Russian economy was just too weak to offer substantial financial support to the treaty states. The biggest problem was that just as the organization that would succeed the Collective Security Treaty, it didn't manage to guarantee security, as conflicts in Nagorno-Karabakh, northern Georgia and the installation of a pro-Russian regime in Tajikistan proved. It eventually led to Georgia, Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan leaving the alliance after the initial 5-year contract expired. While the CST would try to start multiple initiatives to renew the treaty and countries' capabilities to enforce security, especially through the creation of a rapid response force. With the lack of possible Russian support and new US interest in the Central Asian region following the attacks of September 11th, it was no surprise that many nations moved closer and closer to NATO and the US, who were, unlike Russia, able to support them financially. The biggest example of such a move was the new Ganzi airbase in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, which at the time housed 1,600 NATO servicemen and up to 30 aircraft operating against Afghanistan as part of the war on terror. Partially with this in mind, on the 15th of May 2002, the 10th anniversary of the CST Treaty, the treaty states agreed to set up the CSTO, with it officially becoming the CSTO on the 7th October 2002, with the 6 member states being Russia, Belarus, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. The highest body of the CSTO is the Council on the Collective Security, with it consisting of the heads of state of the member states, with the chairman being the head of the state of the nations where the council is held. The CCS sets the basic goals of the CSTO and how to accomplish them. Besides the CCS, 3 other councils were established: the Council of Ministers of Foreign Affairs, the Council of Ministers of Defense, and the Council of Secretaries of Security Councils, each consisting of 1 member per each member state. Day-to-day management of the CSTO is done by the Secretary General, who is a national of one of the CSTO members. He is appointed for a 3-year term by the Council of Ministers of Foreign Affairs. The current Secretary General is Kazakh Imani Sagamabetov. The longest-serving Secretary General is Russian Nikolai Bardusha, who describes the 3 principal areas for guaranteeing and strengthening national, regional, and international security in the OSCE Yearbook 2010 as follows. First, joint action by member states to reinforce stability, build confidence, and elevate tensions and conflict that could lead to the escalation of a situation or unleash crisis mechanisms leading to armed conflict. Second, collective action and agreed measures by member states to combat non-traditional challenges and threats to security stemming from erosion of stability, the systematic violation of state borders, increased cross-border migration by armed groups, and the nurturing of extremist and terrorist organizations within states. Third, combating traditional threats to security. These include an armed attack on a state or group of states, the likelihood of war with the use of conventional weapons, and interstate conflict with the deployment of weapons of mass destruction. One reason for the establishment of the CSTO was the threat of the Taliban in Afghanistan. Nikolai Boryusov describes the following goals of the CSTO as combating terrorism, the drug trade, and illegal migration. Another reason for the quick transition was the ever-growing threat of NATO expansion, as during the 2002 Prague summit, NATO invited 7 countries to start NATO membership negotiations, among them 3 Baltic republics. But what was the track record of the CSTO in the last years? To discuss this, we will talk about 3 major controversial events regarding the CSTO space: Armenia, the Kyrgyzstan-Tajikistan clash, and the Kazakhstan intervention. In Armenia, during the fall of 2020, a 6-week conflict erupted in Nagorno-Karabakh. A disputed territory, the conflict pitted Azerbaijan, backed by Turkey and Israel, against Armenia, semi-backed by Russia, and the CSTO, over the territory that had been forcibly seized from Azerbaijan during the First Nagorno-Karabakh War. The territory remained a bone of contention as Armenia dug in and Azerbaijan rearmed. The clashes in Armenia are arguably the biggest controversy of the CSTO, and specifically Russia, as not at one point was the mutual defense clause of the CSTO activated, while some may state that no CSTO members would have to be forced to defend Armenia, as none of the CSTO members, including Armenia, recognize Artsakh as part of Armenia. Well, that is true, but Azerbaijan did not just attack Artsakh, but also partially attacked and occupied parts of the border region of Armenia and Azerbaijan. This unwillingness to intervene is partially thanks to Russia's passive stance in the Caucasus, as they don't want to alienate Azerbaijan and force them into a Western sphere of influence. This unwillingness has resulted in the CSTO becoming very unpopular in Armenia, as only 19% of the Armenian population think that the CSTO can resolve the current problem in Artsakh. The Kyrgyzstan-Tajikistan clashes. Arguably, the biggest failure of the CSTO were the Kyrgyzstan-Tajikistan border clashes, where not just like in the case of Armenia, a member state was attacked by a foreign power, but on 2 occasions, CSTO member states attacked each other, as both in 2021 and 2022, conflict escalated along the western border of Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. These clashes were reportedly due to an old water dispute between the 2 countries near the Vorokov enclave. The first clashes resulted in a total of 55 deaths and 70,000 people being displaced. The Kazakhstan intervention. Supposedly only CSTO intervention was that in Kazakhstan, where a multi-nation CSTO force was deployed to stop anti-government protests and prop up the pro-Russian government. While many may characterize this as a CSTO success, it isn't as simple as this, as the CSTO forces didn't fire 1 bullet during these operations, as they were not even part of the anti-protester operations, playing a very small role in the events, as they only guarded government areas. The obvious conclusion you can come to after seeing these incidents is that the CSTO is by no means comparable to NATO or any other major defensive alliance, as it has failed in accomplishing its major goal, that is ensuring collective security. I hope you enjoyed the video. It has been a while since I made one. The last one was in July, I think. I know it has been a while, and I know I said it would only be like a month till I made another one, but I had been just too lazy and I had been too busy playing Starfield, which is a pretty good game, I suppose, and I'm currently still playing it after a good month of it being out. I can only recommend it. Markus Weissmann out.